When it comes to the crucifixion of Jesus, actually, it's a lot of people misquote what the Quran actually says. And they just focus on the fact that we don't believe he was killed or crucified. But what the Quran actually says word for word is they meaning the Romans and Jews and people, they did not kill him, nor did they crucify him, but it was made to appear that way. So let me kind of paint the picture because context is very important. You have Jesus, right? Just like Moses went to his people and it literally split the sea for them. Jesus came, he healed. He's like, you're blind, let me heal you. You have leprosy, let me heal you. This water, I will walk on it. This water, I will turn it to wine. There's no explanation other than this person is a prophet of God and telling the truth, and we need to listen to them. They still do not listen. Though these are clearly very disobedient and defiant people. Just like, unfortunately, the children of Israel had a history of being very defiant. And I don't need to mention the numerous times where that's recorded in the Quran and in the Old Testament. So these people very clearly knew he was a prophet, but still wanted to kill him. They still wanted to go out of their way and get rid of him. So God, you can maybe look at it as their punishment. Let them think that they succeeded in it. Because God leaves astray those who don't want to be guided. He gives them the message. They reject it enough times. God said, okay, fine. You want to be left astray? Go astray. So they thought he was crucified, but he wasn't. And what happened is very actually interesting. I'll send you guys a video that highlights this. But in Psalm 91, it speaks about Jesus, and this is confirmed in the New Testament, being protected by God, so his enemies will not beat him, and he will be raised up to heaven by the angels. The angels will take him up to heaven, right? This is prophecy about Jesus. And what happened in the kind of, Christian theology is that he was killed. So how was he protected and taken up by angels if he ended up being killed? That doesn't add up. The Quran came down and said that the angels took Jesus up, peace and blessings be upon him, and protected him so that he can come back, which we believe he's going to come back as well for the second coming and kill the Antichrist and all of that. So very interesting, because now you're going to be saying, whoa, Rami, relax. What the heck's wrong with you? You're crazy. You're so ahistorical. I want to slap you. But hear me out. The Quran says that it was made to appear that way. So what the people think that back then is that Jesus was crucified. So that is without a doubt what they are going to say. But I will mention, is it completely 100% ahistorical to say that there were people that believed he was not crucified? That's not true. There was a 2nd century church father named Basilides, who people said that he claimed to have a secret tradition. He believed, and this is written in the Book of Heresies by, I forget who wrote it, that Jesus was switched out on the cross with Simon. And we believe that Simon, not Simon, but we believe that... Which
Simon? Simon Peter or the second Simon?
I'm not sure which Simon.
Okay, not that it matters, just in case you know. Okay.
Yeah. So this Irenaeus claimed that Basilides claimed that Simon was switched out with Jesus on the cross. And some scholars say that what happened is God replaced Jesus with one of the disciples or with another person and made him look like Jesus, so that people would think it was him, kind of as their punishment. So there's actually a 2nd century person who was a church father, who believed that Jesus was not crucified. And you have people like the Ebionites and I think the Monarchites or something like that, who believe that Jesus was not God, but a prophet and a messenger, like Muslims believe. So all I'm going to say is that Judeo-Christian history, including the time of Jesus, is not something that is certain or factual. Simon of Cyrene, the Warner says. Thank you, brother Habibi. But so all I'm trying to say is that it is not something that is clear-cut, especially historically. And it is definitely something to be investigated and does not invalidate the Quran kind of based on what is said. Does that make sense? I know I said a lot. Do you have any questions about that?
That makes sense. It's definitely like that. That's probably the biggest difference in the religions, no? Because
funny.
No. So wait. I want to recap and make sure I understand what you're saying. Okay.
Please,
so
yes.
My story is they put Jesus up on the cross. The disciples who were not in hiding at that point, including his mother and Mary Magdalene, and many others were there, watched him die, buried him in the tomb, which they didn't always give that even much courtesy to people that were crucified, but they did. They let him be buried in a tomb. 3 days later, Mary Magdalene was the first one to see him. He came out and he was like, "Hey, I'm not dead. Hey, God brought me back to life and I'm resurrected," and which is an example of what will happen to all of us if we believe and we succumb to God's will. And then there were hundreds and hundreds of eyewitnesses to his resurrection, and the story spread like wildfire after that. And it was already a fire and it went nuts. Okay, that's my story. what I'm hearing is they switched him out. They put somebody else on, one of the apostles, and the people that were there witnessing Jesus's crucifixion actually were tricked by God, because God made this other person look like Jesus. And then 3 days later, Jesus just like popped out from behind a tree and was like, like, what happened? Like, I'm exaggerating. I'm making light of it. But, it doesn't, like, the part that God, why would God trick someone into it's overcomplicating the story. It seems than what it, my story is hard enough to believe.
So, and just to make sure we're on the same page before Rami carries on, the theological, I guess, significance of the biblical narrative is that this is the original sin. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That he dies in order that all of our sins might be forgiven. Yes, to cleanse all of his followers of sin.
Isn't that like the most important part of the whole religion? It's like the base of it. I mean, no, Jesus dying on the cross. Yeah. So like that's a massive difference. Like in the two religions, like it's a big deal.
Yeah. So I just wanted to outline that to the viewers too, because people are like, where are you guys going with this? This is the main theological significance of the crucifixion that they believe.
Yeah, 100%. So when this is why, well, first I want to mention, we don't believe Jesus came back 3 days later. We don't believe he appeared ever, since then. We do believe in the second coming and the Antichrist and all that. Obviously that hasn't happened yet, but we do believe that will happen. The reason I mentioned kind of the context is because it sounds bad if God like just tricks people. But like I mentioned, God is not just tricking innocent people. He sent them a messenger who, from our perspective, spoke as a baby, healed the blind and the lepers, walked on water, as recorded in the Bible, did all these miracles, and they still rejected him. So God let them go further into misguidance. That's basically it. But at the same time, you still have remnants in even what we have today in the Bible of Jesus. And like, for example, Psalm 91, like I mentioned, saying that basically he will not be crucified, for lack of a better term. You still have Jesus himself kind of saying that there's one God and not claiming to be God and all of that stuff. But I want to ask you a question now. You mentioned there were hundreds of eyewitnesses. Now, my question is, were there hundreds of reports, or was there one report that mentioned hundreds of eyewitnesses?
There were many reports. I can't give you a number. I can come back on our next talk and give you more actual. I'll give you more. I'll do more research and give some more data from the theologians and historians who have studied this for 2,000 years now, and I'll be happy to. But go back to when he was arrested, and he went through a full day of torture and lashings and carrying a cross through this town before he was ultimately hung on the cross. And so for me so whether or not someone would believe that he resurrected, there really is very little historical dispute that he went through that process, and he suffered tremendously. The crown of thorns, the lashings with the whip that had fragments of bone and nail woven into it, that his back was raw, and many people died just from the beating he took before he even got up on the cross. So there is eyewitness and historical documentation around that, mostly from apostles and theologians, but also from some, there was a guy named Josephus who was like a historian at the time, who was not a religious figure, and he mostly reported on political stuff. And, he talks about Jesus a little bit in there. So there's so much there that says that it was him and it did happen. And for me, it's a bigger leap that God would try to further fool the people that were doing that to him, because I think what happened after that is many of those people came to repent and turn to God after the resurrection, after Jesus's death and at the resurrection, because they said, now they're like, oh my God, what have I done? And I think that is more powerful for them. So I'm just not sure what the motivation is for changing that story, other than to undermine the resurrection.
What if it wasn't changing the story, but actually clarifying a misunderstanding?
If it was, that's a good point. But it doesn't. It feels like it's unclarifying it, and I feel it feels muddier than the original story.
All right, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and if you're interested in learning how to dominate social media and make money online, I'm having a crazy sale with my online academy where I teach you all my strategies, how I've hit over 100,000 subs in 4 months, how I've generated $5 million using organic marketing. So DM me bank if you guys want to learn more about that.